Hello, welcome to the Craft House Magic Setter tutorials. My name's Ellie and today I'm going to show you how I did my Icord bind off. So the last two projects that I've been working on, I've done a lovely nice neat Icord bind off all the way around. This shawl here is my Vertices Unite shawl and this is my Northeasterly scarf version. And you can see how lovely and neat and flat that edge comes out, and it's nice and squishy as well. You might want to cast off one edge in the Icord bind off, or for these two I've actually picked up stitches all the way around the piece and then done the Icord bind off. So before you start, you need to think about your tension and what needle size to use. So for these two projects I actually had slip stitches right all the way down the sides, so it was easy to pick up stitches in the slip stitch. Now because you're slipping the stitch on every other row, you get one place to pick up a stitch for every 2 rows. So for something like this, I'd recommend that you actually went up a needle size, like I did for this scarf, or I just made sure that I knitted as loosely as possible when I was doing the Icord. But I recommend going up a needle size if you have got a garment or shawl where you have slip stitches up the side. If you don't have slip stitches, you can pick up a stitch for every row and stick to the same needle size. But again, I do a test just to make sure that the tension of your Icord is how you want it before you carry on the rest of your garment. Try out a little bit first. So for my Northeasterly blanket, I used 2.75mm needles for the patterned area, for the main body of the shawl, and then I've actually switched to 3.5mm for the Icord binding. Now obviously it depends on your tension, so again I just try a little bit out and then decide whether you like that needle size or whether you need to knit looser, etc. So make sure you just try out a little bit first. But the most important thing is that you pick up stitches all the way around your shawl, scarf or garment, etc. Or if you're just doing a length, just make sure that all your stitches are picked up on the area that you want to finish your Icord on. So this is my Cosy Memories blanket, and here I haven't actually slipped the stitches on the side of the work, so what I'm going to do is actually pick up a stitch for every stitch I've cast off along the edge, and I'm going to use the same needles that I used for the blanket squares. Again, if you've done slip stitches, I recommend that you go up a needle size and just test out that you're happy with how it's casting off before you do all the way round your blanket or shawl, etc. So I would recommend using a set of circular needles, and you need to make sure that your cord is long enough to pick all the stitches from around the blanket or shawl, etc. Here I've just got a short one, just because I'm going to show you just a quick example of how I cast off here. This is my Cosy Memories blanket. I have a tutorial on YouTube which I shall leave a link to in the show notes that you can find the pattern for. But as I haven't finished this blanket yet, I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration of how I cast off down this edge here. So this is the end of the yarn that I'm going to use for my Icord. So this is a different ball of yarn that I've got separate from the squares, so I'm going to join it on now by starting to pick up stitches down the side of the block. As I've said before, if you have done a slip stitch every other row, just go into each of the slip stitches and pick up a stitch, and then you can just make sure that you've used either a larger needle to make sure your tension isn't pulling across where you've bound off, or you just make your stitches looser. Depends on how you knit really. So I'm going to work across here. So as I'm picking up stitches, it's just the standard method. I'm putting my needle in to the side of the work, and I've got 2 strands of yarn there on when I'm picking up each stitch. If you only go into one, you'll find that the edge is a little bit messy, so I'm making sure that I take the 2 strands on the edge there, if that makes sense. Let me come a bit closer to the camera for you. You may be picking up stitches along an edge where there's garter ridges like this. I'd recommend that you go into the purl bumps of each row. So by that I mean picking up a purl bump on the edge of each of the garter rows. As so, but I'll continue with the other square now. So there we are. I've just picked up stitches for my one square, but if I wanted to actually finish off this blanket, I'd be going all the way around the edge, picking up stitches, and then I'd be working my I-cord. So if I'd gone in a circle, I'd be back at the beginning, so that I'd have stitches picked up all the way around, and then I'd be starting with my yarn at the beginning of the work again. But here obviously I'm just showing you a little example on one square. So imagine I'd picked up stitches all the way around, and because as I've picked up with the end of the yarn, my yarn would end up back at the beginning and I'd be ready to start my I-cord. So first thing I need to do is cast on 3 stitches. So that the thickness of the I-cord that I use is 3 stitches, but you can vary this, so have a little play. So you put your needle into the first stitch, pull a stitch through, and then transfer it onto the left hand needle. Do the same again. And one more time. So there's 3 extra stitches. Because I have the end of the work here, it can be a little bit loose, so you just need to tighten that up when you've cast on those 3 stitches, and then we can start doing the I-cord bind off. So we want to knit 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we're going to knit these 2 together but through the back loop. So you've knitted 3 in total. So I want to transfer those 3 stitches back onto the left hand needle, and we're going to do the same again. So it's knit, knit, and then knit through the back loop of the next 2 stitches. So you're knitting them together, and then you transfer them back over to the left hand needle. And to start with, it looks a little bit funny, but carry on and it'll look like a lovely neat I-cord. So I've now worked all the way along that edge where I've picked up stitches, and it's given a lovely finish there. So if you were to work all the way around your blanket, you'd end up back to this point, and you could then join your ends. So you've got 2 options. You could actually use a provisional cast on where I've started here and Kitchener stitch with the end so that they join nicely together, or you could just cast these stitches off like you would normally and just hand stitch them together with a darning needle. So you can just do one edge of your blanket like this, or all the way around if you wanted to. So don't forget to do a little sample of your I-cord bind off, just to make sure that you're happy with how the tension is working with the rest of your blanket. If that was pulling in a little bit tight, you might want to go up a needle size. One last tip I have is that if you're going round a corner or a curve of a blanket, it's to pick up an extra couple of stitches where the I-cord goes around, so that you don't get the I-cord pulling in the corner, so you get a slightly sharper corner. So I hope you found the tutorial useful. If you have any questions, just pop them in the comments down below, and I shall see you in the next tutorial or podcast. Bye!